What's up, everybody? This is Jaren from REtipster.com, and today I'm super excited because I'm actually going to be interviewing my former boss over at Simple Wholesaling, Brett Snodgrass.
What's going on, Jaren? Super excited to be on your show today. REtipster rocks.
It's really awkward, or not awkward, but it's just funny because it's like I'm so used to being the co-host to your podcast, and now it's like you're the co-host of my podcast. It's awesome.
Hey, I'm starting a movement, and it's called Co-Hosts Matter. I'm just kidding.
That was just so everyone knows, that was an inside joke. I used to joke around all the time when I was the co-host of the Simple Wholesaling podcast. For those of you who don't know, if you're interested in learning how to wholesale or you have questions, Brett has a ton of resources over at simplewholesaling.com. And if you're looking for rental properties, Indianapolis is one of the best markets ever, and he's the guy you want to talk to. They have some of the best deals, super high integrity. I can't say more than enough. I, at one point, was ready and willing to give my whole life to Simple Wholesaling, so I'm a big fan. I really really love these guys, so you got to check them out. If this goes on.
Let me just tell you about our company real quick and give a good plug for our company. Oh, we did. So, yes, thanks, Jaren.
Yeah, man, of course. Good companies need to get plugged, you know. So I'm going to link to them in the description below this video. Today, I'm just going to pick your brain about self-employment questions, man. So like we were on a office hours and somebody asked the question. We've done a couple of different interviews with different people to just get different perspectives, but somebody asked us like, how do you, when you're a full-time real estate investor, you have a real estate business full-time, how do you structure your finances? Like, how much goes to savings? How much goes to taxes? How much goes to your personal, like, money that you live off of? Like, how does all that work? So take us back, man, to kind of how you first got started, you know, and how did you structure your business?
Yeah, definitely. So just real quick, a little bit about me. Run a company called Simple Wholesaling, but it didn't start off with Simple Wholesaling. We just started that brand about a few years ago. But I've been wholesaling houses for about 11 years now, which seems like a really long time. And I'm feeling, as soon as you get into the double-digit numbers, it's like, man, I've been doing this forever. And it's crazy. But I actually lived in a little place called Bloomington, Indiana. And I remember I bought a condo I didn't have very good credit. So I bought a condo on land contract with $2,000 down, by the way. And we bought it for $72,000. And it was a 900 square foot condo. And I was working with a land developer at that time, and I was basically a bird dog for this land guy, which, Jaren, you know a lot about land. So I was just helping him find these large pieces of land, and I was getting a commission from that, just a bird dog finder's fee and all that. And I was working with him at the time. And then I started, reading books, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, some of these real estate investment books, and I really got interested in buying a house for myself. And then my dad and I bought our very first house for $9,000 in Youngstown, Ohio, and drove there to Youngstown. And if you ever, if you don't know what a $9,000 house looks like, which I didn't at that time, but when I saw it, I was like, okay, I understand why this is only $9,000. We bought that house, and then we marketed it. And we didn't have any money to fix it up, so we marketed it and sold it for $15,000, and that's how we kind of got into this business. And a light bulb went off. But you're talking about finances, so I made about $3,000 on that very first deal. And what I did with that was I didn't quit my job with the bird dog land guy. I didn't do that. I basically just took that money and I just reinvested it back into my business. And I just continuously did that. The next deal, we made another $5,000. Next deal, we made another $5,000 or $6,000. And I literally just kept investing back into my business, but I still worked my day job, basically. And with the land guy, I was making about $40,000 a year, I would say. And I did that for a year and a half. So if you're out there and you're just getting started, I've seen guys, they do that very first deal, they make a big check, and then they go and they quit their job. And I wouldn't recommend that. I actually worked my day job for a year and a half until I felt like, you know what, if I went full time into my business, my business was actually making just enough money as my day job before I quit. So I would really recommend that before you just go on your own. But a little bit about my finance at that time, they were low. I was living in a $72,000 condo, driving a beater car worth about $1,000. I was actually flipping some cars at the time too, making a little bit of money that way. Just kept investing back into the business. And I told you this before the show, that I think I didn't really save. I didn't really do anything. I just paid my bills, but kept just taking all the money and investing it back into the business for, I'm going to say, about 5 or 6 years before I started, paying myself a good salary, before savings and all that. And I really kept my my means low, my bills low. I was at that time, I was probably, I don't know, I think my bills are about $2,300 a month, something like that. And I did that for a long time. And I actually remember this one time we did 150 deals in 2008. And I remember one month we, I don't like talking numbers like I do on the Simple Wholesaling show. I don't like to, throw everything out there. But I remember one month we made I made $78,000 in 1 month, which is crazy. But I didn't go out and I didn't go buy a brand new, car, brand new house, anything like that. My bills were $2,300. I made $78, and I just kept pumping it back into the business. And I think that is what made us successful, because I could grow it. And I was just investing in assets.
There's so much value in what you just said. Like, I want everybody to hear 5 to 6 years of living off of $2,300 a month. Like, I want them, if you don't hear anything else in this conversation, just hear that, because, it's super powerful having this kind of long-term strategy with your business and with, your investments, right? Like, so many people today, they're like, okay, I made $5,000 on a house flipping, so I'm quitting everything. And I'm one of those guys. I mean, I quit. I had a great salaried job when I first got started in real estate back in California as an insurance agent. And I quit everything to go door knock pre-foreclosures with a bunch of buddies that had absolutely no money. And it was really, really hard. It got me to where I am today, but it was a very interesting path, to say the least. So, I really think that, and Seth says something very similar, that he's a big proponent of building your real estate business and building your real estate entrepreneur stuff on the side until it's to a point where it can easily surpass your day job, and then make the transition at that point. So take us into a little bit of where you're at today. At the time, did you have any kids? Were you married?
So when I first got into, that's kind of what put a rocket in my butt. That's what I say. I had a daughter, and I was living with my parents, and kind of just, I don't know, if you look in the dictionary, complete loser, there was my picture there. We're probably back in 2007. So had a daughter, and that's really what got me going. I said, I don't want her to grow up with nothing and a loser dad. And I said, I need to do something. So I had a daughter at that time, and now we have a lot of kids. Every time I turn around, we have a kid. So it's pretty crazy. So but we have 4 now.
So talk to me about retirement. Like, now that you're established, now that you have money coming in, your business is kind of on autopilot, doing its thing. How do you structure your personal finances now? Do you set aside stuff for savings? Tell me, just go into all of it for me.
Yeah.
Tell
definitely.
me your social security number and your bank account number.
All right, we'll do a blood test after the show. So now, even when the business started being really successful, and I had a team, and I was talking to my business coach, and we sat down literally, I think, 1.5 years ago, and I was paying myself a pretty fair salary, modest salary. I think it was about $50,000 a year, maybe 60, and the business was doing really well. And that's when he said, well, most CEOs, pay themselves $100,000 or something. You guys are doing pretty well. So that's when I started increasing it a little bit. But you asked about, I'll just kind of separate it in some different categories. So I believe, I do believe in this diversification, where I don't have all of my eggs in one basket. 5, 6, 7 years ago, I had all my eggs in my business. If my business tanked, I was just kind of done, right? But since then, we actually diversify a little bit where I take $1,000 a month and I do put it into a savings account. And I don't think that I have to continuously do that, but I do believe in the Dave Ramsey principle that if I look at my bills, I need to have about 6 months that if something tanks, if the market corrects itself, if the business goes under, some catastrophe happens, I'll at least have some 6 months worth of money. So I'm trying to do that.
Now, is that on your personal side or is that on your business side as well?
So that's on my personal side. So, personal savings account right now, wherever you're at. But I can afford to take $1,000 a month out of my paycheck and I put that into a savings account. Once I reach that 3 months to 6 months, I probably won't do that anymore because I want to take that money. And I always believe in buying assets. If I put it in a savings account, just going to sit there. It's not going to grow. It's just for, just for an emergency, basically emergency fund. And that's why I do that. So once I have that 6 months built up, you can do something else with that money. As far as retirement goes, about 8 years ago, I was introduced to a company. I sold a house to a lady, and when I got the paperwork and the purchase agreement, it had a really long, weird name on it, and it was Pensco Trust, blah, 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 IRA, something, whatever. And I said, what is this? I've never seen this before. And she explained to me, well, I buy properties out of my self-directed IRA. And it's pretty cool. So, and I said, that's interesting. So I said, why do you do that? And she said, well, because I can buy houses, I can sell houses, I can rent out houses, and I don't have to pay the taxes on it. But the money has to come from the IRA, and then when you sell it, it has to go back into the IRA. So I actually researched that, and about 8 years ago, I developed a self-directed IRA with a company called Pensco Trust Company. They're out of Denver, Colorado. There's a lot of them out there. There's another big one called Equity Trust Company. And I've grown that. So I put in the max that I can each year into that IRA. And I've been able to buy and sell several houses out of that IRA. I don't know how many I've bought and sold in the past 8 years, but I've really been able to grow that to a few hundred thousand over the past several years. So that's what I use for retirement. So that kind of answers your question with that.
Do you have rental properties in there as well, or do you just do wholesaling within your self-directed IRA?
So IRAs really like to see passive income. So they're more structured for rental properties because whenever you buy and sell a property, there's a little bit more legwork, a little bit more paperwork involved. So it's kind of a nuisance at the end of the day because of all the paperwork that you have to do. So they're really set up for passive income. I have a couple of land contracts in there that I've bought a property and I've sold it with owner financing. And then that's in my IRA. I have a couple of rental properties. I've loaned money out of IRAs. That's a great passive income resource that I've been able to do. So I do a multiple out of the IRA because it's grown to a point now where I would rather do some more passive things out of it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, I think retiring through buy and hold or buy and hold / owner financing is a great idea for retirement stuff. And I think for our audience who primarily do land, I mean, selling certain big parcels of land on owner, through land contract or through owner financing, that might be a pretty cool thing for you guys to do in your IRAs. So definitely, I'll link to that crazy Pensco Trust link in the description below the video. So definitely check that out.
Yeah. And then, so we kind of covered, I do some savings, I do some retirement, and that, the Pensco Trust and the self-directed IRA, you just have to see where you're at. If you're young and you don't want to wait, because I can't really take that money out until I'm 59 years old, something like that. So just kind of depends on where you're at in life. And one other thing is, I know you don't talk a lot about stocks and mutual funds and things like that, but when I got married to my wife 6 years ago, she brought into our marriage some stocks and some mutual funds that she had inherited from her family. And at the time, I was like, man, we just got to get rid of all this because I just want to invest it all into my business because my number one asset is my business.
Yeah.
8% interest or 10% growth, it's not sexy in the wholesaling business when I say, you know what, I can take $100,000 and I could probably make 100% on it, right? But you can only do that so much. So I didn't do that, and I got some advice, and we actually kept, and we still have those mutual funds, those stocks, and those are growing. But one thing that I didn't realize that I can do with that, if you talk to a local bank, and we found one here in Indianapolis, that we could borrow a line of credit against that stock or mutual fund account.
Wow, that's really cool.
Yeah, and so they took the value and they lent us 70% of that value, so I can use that line of credit for my wholesaling business, but still have the stocks to grow as well. So diversification is kind of where we're at, but I'd say percentage-wise, still my biggest asset's the business, and I'm still dumping 80% into that because I can grow it so much faster.
Yeah, so that's another big takeaway is that, a lot of the times we look at our real estate business as a means to an end, right? And it is. The reason why it exists is so that you can have an awesome life and do what you've been put on this earth to do, right? But it is still your largest asset that you have. Your business is your biggest cash generation machine that you have to buy and hold real estate or to do whatever you want to do with your investments. So I think it's super crucial to just be intentional about paying your business first instead of paying yourself first, and it's something that I'm planning on doing in my my land business, because I've made some good money in my land business, but the minute I made money, I went and I bought a new car and I did a bunch of stupid stuff, and so now I've learned my lesson, and I know okay, the money that I make from my land business, I need to keep it in my land business and keep growing my land business, So
yeah. And one of the things I've been looking at too is we borrow money from private lenders. So if I can learn to take the money that I'm making and either pay down those private lenders and self-fund more of our deals where we're just using our own resources, if I'm paying a private lender 12%, 14%, whatever that looks like, if I can start to self-fund that, I just started to make 12 to 4% on my money, which is better than putting it into a stock market. So one of the things you look at in your business is if you can learn to look and where you're at and cut down, the fastest way you'll make money is you start cutting down the expenses. And that's one of our big expenses that we're trying to do is self-fund more. So I don't know, that's just something.
Yeah, man, no, that's a huge takeaway. So let's try to land this plane here. I don't want this to get super long, but one of the things that was specifically asked was how you structure your business in terms of expenses. So you don't have to give specific numbers if you don't want to, but if we talk percentages, how much, let's say just for sake of example, let's say there's $10,000 that comes in. What percentage of that $10,000 goes to marketing, goes to your team, goes to you, and then goes to back into the business, or do you have any kind of existing savings for your business? How does that work? Or is it just everything in the kitchen sink, just throw it in there?
Yeah, I'm not that, my business is kind of like my closet at home. It's just very disorganized sometimes. But if you have to break it down, and I'm getting better. The biggest thing in your business is, whether you're just starting out or whether you've been doing it for 11 years, is just each week, each day, you're just trying to get better. And the organizational skills, it's just not my gift. And I'm trying to get better at it. So, if you want to break it down into percentages, I know that if $10,000 came in, we try to take about 30% of that to go into marketing. And that's, so that's what we kind of put into marketing. Probably another 30, well, I'd say probably another 30% is going into the payroll to the team, and what that looks like.
How many do you have on your team right now?
So we have 8 people, and that includes 2 virtual assistants from the Philippines. So we have 6 locals and then 8, and then 2 virtual assistants.
Awesome.
So, yeah. And really, at the end of the day, I try to be left with, out of that $10,000, I really want, my goal is to be left with $3,500 after, I pay the marketing, I pay the team, and I want to be left with about 35%. That's my goal. And that's kind of hard to hit. That's a pretty big number. If you look at all businesses in a whole, and I actually asked my business coach this one time. He said, if a business is, at the end of the day, they're keeping 5%, they're on life support. They're like barely hanging on. 10% is the average, and 15%, if at the end of the day you make 10,000 and you're keeping 1,500, that is the top, right? That's like, you're doing amazing. And our goal is 35%. So so
you sound like a land investor, man.
Yeah, I know, definitely. And maybe it's just a different business model. Last year, I think we ended up with 28%, which, is pretty good. This year, I want to do about 35, but that's what I try to keep at the end of the day. So 30% to marketing, the other 30% maybe to everything else in the team, and then I hope to keep 3,500 of that
in the business, right? So then what percentage, so is that 30% include your salary as well?
Yeah, so that I include my salary, and you just have to kind of pick and choose. If you're just getting going and your business is making $10,000, I don't know, $5,000 a month, you're not going to pay yourself $4,500. I didn't hardly pay myself anything, till you get going. So you just kind of have to look at your business. And now I pay myself a pretty good salary, but my salary is included in those percentages now, but it wasn't for the first 5, 6, 7 years. I just, whatever the business was left with, that was just mine, which I don't know if that's the right mentality. That's just how I put it together.
Awesome, man. Well, I have one last question to dive in with you on. How do you feel about debt? Like from a business standpoint versus a personal standpoint, what's your take? Like, are you comfortable? Obviously you use private lenders. Real estate is a very debt oriented business. What is your take on how do you structure debt in a healthy way in your business?
I think you really just have to know where you're at. I think when people get in trouble with debt is they just dive in and they start borrowing, and they borrow here, borrow there, and they don't really know what they're spending. And all of a sudden, 6 months later, they're looking and like, wow, I don't have any money. I'm actually in the hole, $100,000. I think that's when you get in a lot of trouble. So I don't like debt. I think, when the Bible talks about, the borrower's servant to the lender, things like that. So I don't like it. But in the real estate business, in order to scale, you have to leverage. And so I borrow from private lenders. I don't over leverage. Every loan that I ever do, I have skin in the game. I don't do 100% because I want my money to work, number one. Plus, I feel like I just have more of an invested interest in, if somebody's giving me 100% of the money, it might go on the back burner and then I just kind of forget about it. But I want some skin in the game. So I never borrow 100%. And when I do borrow, their money is more important than my money. And so I pay them back before I pay myself, right? Because they're great relationships and I don't want to let them down. So their money is more important than my money. And so I have debt, but I'm always trying to figure out, again, how can I do better? How can I self-fund more? How can I lower this debt? How can I lower the interest rate? I had 2 conversations on the way over here before this meeting with 2 of my private lenders on, here's my goal. What can we do? Can we lower this? Can we do something different? Because again, I can lower my expenses. But my ultimate goal is to, self-fund more, get out of debt, and I just use it as a tool. I don't use it as I don't like consumer debt, I guess. I don't go out and buy a, $50,000 car. I drive a $7,200 Chrysler Aspen that breaks down, sometimes. I, don't live, super lavishly, and I don't do all that. I don't believe in consumer debt. But if you use debt as a tool in a smart way, then I think it can really, really help, and really you can scale and build a business with it.
That's awesome. Yeah, I agree. I think that In my personal life, I'm very much pro Dave Ramsey. In my business life, not so much. Because, and here's the thing, for me personally, like if I can structure partnerships over a debt relationship, that's personally what I try to strive for. So, you know, like right now I have a financier in my land business that I give him like 40 to 50% depending on the circumstances, right? Like it's a lot. But I rather structure that because they're invested in my success. You know, I'm invested in their success, and it's kind of a win-win. Not a lot of people like to pay the kind of price that it, you know, the percentages that it takes to do partnerships, but I'm a big fan of partnerships, you know, and equity partnerships when I can be. But there's drawbacks there as well. So, you know, there's ways you can go about it, but you know, if you can pay $100 for the power of 1,000, and you can use that 1,000 to go make 100,000 or 10,000, it's much better. It's much better to pay $100 to get 1,000 to make 10,000. No matter how much like you slice it, it's just that's better. If you took $1,000 that would make you $10,000, and you broke that down into hundreds, how many more deals could you do? Right? That's why the power of leverage really makes sense when it comes to investing and making money in business. Now, I've just found that in my mind, peace of mind is such a key factor that nobody thinks about when they run numbers, right? And I have so much more peace of mind when I don't have all these payments I have to pay. I'd much rather have my car paid off and just be happy, you know?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, you know, a lot of times the business and your personal, as far as what I go, it kind of mixes each other. So if I'm driving a car around and it's all paid off and it's worth $20,000 and I could go get a loan on it for $20,000 at 6% interest, let's just say, and I'm driving around all paid off, but I'm borrowing $20,000 from this private lender at 14% interest, it's better for me to go get the car loan, take that 20 grand at 6% interest and put it in your business. So kind of look and just be creative, I think, to where you're at. And I'm just trying to do that every single day. That's why I had these conversations with these two private lenders. You know, my biggest goal this year is to, I think in a mastermind group a while back, a guy was talking and he said, how can you make more money in your business without doing any more deals? And you just have to like look at your business, you know, from thousands of feet view and see, okay, what's my pain point? And the biggest way to do that is, okay, I'm spending this much money here. Can I reduce that? And just kind of, you know, taking it from there. And that's kind of what we're doing, I guess, with it. So don't believe in consumer debt. Use it as a tool, but be very, very conservative, very smart with it. I see people just throw it around like it's just nothing, right? So.
One question, just curious, do you always have a cash reserve that if push came to shove, you had to pay off all your loans? Could you do that? And do you structure it that way, or do you just take the risk and be like, you know, it's okay to have, and just trust the deals?
So could I take all of the money that I have in my bank account and right now and pay off all of my loans? I could not, you know, to answer that question truthfully. But I do own a lot of properties free and clear, and then my debt is tied to properties, right? So, and it's very conservative. We buy the properties at a good price because we know exactly what we're doing. I don't borrow 100%. I usually borrow at 80%, something like that. So if I had to pay off all of my debt, I could fire sale all my properties and just sell them for what I have in them, or at a loss if I had to, and still pay off the debt, right? So I guess I don't know if that answers your question.
No, yeah, that does. And that's kind of moving forward how I want to structure my personal business. Like, no matter what debt I have, I want to be able to have the ability, at least in inventory, to pay off my debt. Because if I had to fire sale, worst case scenario, and I needed to get out of the business or whatever, like I want to be able to have that option. And I think that that's another takeaway, that if you can structure it that way, if you go into leverage and you go into, you know, debt and private money and all of that, I would structure it in a way where worst case scenario, if you had to sell off all your inventory and you know, that coupled with, you know, the money you have in your business, if you could pay off all your debt, then I think you're fine. Because you could make an argument to Dave Ramsey that technically you're not in debt because you have it in just in a different asset. It's not in cash, but whatever. Anyway, I digress.
I think the biggest thing is personal finances and business finances, because the bigger you get, the more deals you're doing, the more complicated it gets, and the harder it is to keep your thumb on it. And so every quarter I actually go through my personal finances and I go through my business finances. I figure out, you know, here's how many properties we have, here's all of our debts, and kind of just the figuration, the formula of finding out your net worth. And I just try to keep a tab on that. And each quarter just to see, am I thinking right? Am I missing something? Are we totally way off base? And just keeping a tab on it, I think, and just kind of figuring that out each quarter to see if you're growing, are you scaling, or do you think that you're growing, but you're really like losing money? Because that's easy to do in this business because it's just, you know, it's a lot of moving parts.
One thing that just sprung up is taxes. Let's finish the conversation on that. I know taxes are a nightmare. You're not a CPA. I'm not a CPA. We can't give tax advice legally, but just in terms of percentage or structure, what do you kind of, as a general rule of thumb or ballpark, what do you do to prepare for taxes?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So
when anybody ever says, yeah, that's a really good question, they're stalling.
Yeah, I know, definitely. So again, I'm not going to do the best at this, but you know, you're supposed to kind of look and pay quarterlies and what your tax bracket is and save back money for that. Again, I keep a tab on my business, so I know how much money I have, I know how much cash I have, I know how much debt I have. So I'm not gonna come to tax time in April with my pants down and realize, oh my gosh, I owe 100,000, but I only have 30. What am I gonna do?
Right.
So do I pay all the money quarterlies? You know, I owed money last year, and I got the bill, and I owed a lot of money because we had a great year. Owed a lot of money, and I got the bill, and I saw the penalty on there for how much money I owed, and I was like, this penalty it's not very much. And I had to look at the numbers, and if I would have paid all that money in versus that penalty that I owed, it would have really hurt me because I was paying more money in private lenders and all that stuff. So you know, my tax brackets, you know, last year was 39%. So one of the things is I just keep a tab on it. I do pay in money from payroll and taxes and all of that. Again, I just try to keep a tab so I know exactly where my business is at. I know exactly where we're at. So I know how much money I'm going to owe when tax time comes, right? So I know I have that in the back. One of the other things I would really suggest is, and I just started doing this recently, is if you are starting to make money and you're starting to get a lot of traction in scaling your business, is to meet with a CPA and meet with a tax strategist that you can start to have some knowledge about how can you save money on taxes. So there's some great strategies out there that I didn't even know about that you can cut your tax bill in half and all that. So I would start that process if you're starting to scale. But if you're just getting started and you haven't even done a deal yet, go out and do some deals first. Create some value before you even start thinking about that, you know? So
yeah, great advice. Man, this has been an awesome interview, man. I miss you, man.
Thanks, Jaren.
I
miss you.
I miss you, bro.
I think we should get an apartment together in Chicago one of these days.
Let's do it, man. Hey, I am super down. I am falling in love with the Chicago market and everything about this city. So like, it's funny because I'm a managing broker in Indiana, and all my land stuff is in Indiana still, but like, and the taxes are horrible in Illinois. Like they almost are make it not worth it. But I love this city so much. I almost want to chomp into this.
You want to curl it up and cuddle with the city of Chicago?
I just love this place. So, but hey, to keep it nostalgic, I'm gonna end this with a touch of randomness. So for those of you who don't know, on the Simple Wholesaling Show, we end every interview with a ridiculously stupid question. Like so stupid that Brett would have to, like, I would write the show outline, and then I would say, you know, if you were a hot dog, would you eat yourself? And he would have to go in and, like, delete it and, like, make it less stupid.
Yeah, so, I'd make it like, if you could live anywhere, where would it be?
So, touch of randomness. If you could be anything besides a real estate investor, if you could go back to your 20s and start all over, and real estate was not an option, what would you do and why?
That's a really good question. I always say that I'm just in the people business, and I just love people. I love pouring into people. So I definitely do something with people. I love ministry as a Christian. I became a Christian when I was 30 years old. So I had a hard 20s, not in the business sense maybe, but in the personal sense. It was a tough decade for me. So love that age group. So I would definitely do something where I could minister and pour into young men with their struggles in life and just speak to them. I don't know if that answers your question, but yeah. I think that's what I would do. Speaking and pouring into young men.
Now, if you could randomly punch any person in the face that you'd like, anyone that you could just randomly punch in the face, who would it be and why?
I think it'd be Seth Williams.
What? Just kidding. Those fighting words. This has been great. This interview will go nowhere ever. No, that's awesome.
Man, I don't know. That's
We used to ask that and make people. There was one time we almost asked somebody, like, if you could date anybody else besides your wife, who would it be? And I was like, that's not a good. We should not ask that question.
It'd probably be one of our cash buyers lately, because we get a lot of buyers that they overpromise, say they're going to close on something, and then they don't, and then we ask them for their earnest money, and they never send it, and then I just want to punch them right in the face. So
I hate that. I really do. So, well, hey man, if people want to connect with you, where do they find you? Where do they go?
Yes, thank you so much for asking, Jaren. And you can go to our website at simplewholesaling.com. We have some great blogs and resources, and you can check out our podcast on iTunes, the Simple Wholesaling Podcast. And if you're in Indianapolis or interested in Indianapolis properties, we also have all of our properties on our website at simplewholesaling.com. And feel free to reach out. Our contact information is on there, and we'd love to hear from you.
Yep. Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. And we're out.
Thanks, Jaren. Appreciate it, man.